My father was born in Juarez, where I don't know in Juarez. My mother was born in Guadalupe, which is a very small town compared to Juarez, that is, which is about 35 miles southeast of Juarez. It's on the Mexican side. It's in the same county as Juarez, which is, the name of the county is Rio, well, I forgot. And I don't want to give anything that ain't true. But my father worked for his father. And I'll have to tell you about his father first. But he was a landowner. He was a merchant. I have a letter that was given to the city council of Juarez, which shows the things that my grandfather did for Juarez. Because in that letter they were asking that the name of the street that my grandfather opened in Juarez, the name of that street not be changed to what at the time was a very popular artist in Mexico City, a movie star who had lived in Juarez for a while. And he was so popular that they wanted to change the name of my grandfather's street.
What was your grandfather's name? What was your grandfather's name?
My grandfather's name was Juan Provencio. And in this letter that a city scribe or city secretary wrote to the mayor of Juarez, requesting that the name of that street not be changed because it was built by someone that really loved Juarez and someone that did a lot for Juarez. My grandfather was a mayor of Juarez in 1901 or about then. He was very well liked by the United States people in that he had a store, a dry goods store that sold things that came from Mexico City, from New York, from Paris, from Berlin, while poor little old El Paso only sold U.S. stuff. So the El Pasos used to go to Juarez to do their purchasing, such as the Mexican people coming to El Paso to do their present purchasing. Because El Paso has a better stock of things. And it was that way in Juarez. In fact, one of the biggest stores in El Paso was owned and run by the Schwartz brothers. And they originally came to the border around 1900 and waiting for their immigration requests to be okayed, they spent a period of time in Juarez. During that time, two of the Schwartz brothers, the oldest, in fact, the founders of the popular dry goods store in El Paso, worked for my grandfather in the store that he had in Juarez. During this time, one of them had an accident while selling a pistol and killed a customer. However, it was strictly an accident and nothing ever was done because of it. It was strictly an accident, and I'll repeat that because everybody that I know of that knows about it knows that it was an accident. It wasn't anything that the Mexican government might have overlooked by letting it be called an accident, which it was. Besides this, on this letter, it showed the many things that my grandfather started. He was a member of the board of the first bank in Juarez. He owned the first printing press. He owned the first newspaper published in Juarez. So many things. I'm going to have that letter translated and published one of these days. Anyway, what I'm getting to is that my father, who worked for his father, worked as a boss of a little ranch that was across the border from San Elizario. And I guess the little town of Guadalupe being closer than anything else that was large, he used to ride a horse into it, and for recreation, I guess. And he met my mother there. And my mother and my father were married in 1906. But what I'm getting to is that my father was very attached to his father, probably because of the money end of it, if I may say so. And during the siege by Villa of Juarez, there was an incident that probably can be the reason that my father's family is in the United States today. As you heard, Villa was a bandit. He stole a government, really, with a bunch of people that were just like the people that took Russia. They didn't have jobs. They didn't want jobs. They wanted money, and that's the type of government Villa wanted. Anyway, Villa was storming city by city in Mexico, and he was expected in Juarez during this time, and he was expected to come in through a pass which is east of the mountains south of Juarez. Well, Villa fooled him. He came around that mountain and hit Juarez from the west. And so Juarez was taken easily. During this time, people were rushing to the U.S. if they could, especially the politicians. My grandfather had already been captured before this and had been taken to Chihuahua. On the street that my grandfather built lived the U.S. consul to Juarez. I don't know his name, I wish I did. But he had told my father that if Villa came in, and knowing the situation that my father's father was in, he invited him to his house to take his family, and that they would not be able to touch him there. And sure enough, when my father found out that Villa was in town, he gathered his family, and he was going across the street to where the consul lived when he was stopped by Villa's men. via soldiers or officers. They were on horseback. And my dad immediately gave himself up to them, and he asked that he be allowed to take the family into the United States consul's home, which they had been invited to, and that he would be right back to see what they might want from him. Well, they let him. He did, but he didn't. They let him take the family into the house. They were received by the consul's family. Then my father did not go back to report to the officers or men on horseback. The U.S. consul somehow got them across the river into El Paso so that they were not touched at all by Villa's men. My grandfather had already been captured and taken to Chihuahua, the capital city of the state of Chihuahua, wherein Juarez is located. Villa had told the governor of Chihuahua, who evidently was his friend and was not his prisoner, that he was going to put my grandfather on the wall and shoot him. And the governor, knowing my grandfather and knowing some of his background, requested that Villa not shoot him, but keep him prisoner. Villa said, "No, I will not keep him prisoner. I will not shoot him if he leaves the country and never comes back to Mexico." And so that was the agreement. They let my grandfather go. They brought him to the border. They made him cross the river into the U.S. He had good friends in Las Cruces, and he wanted to be away from the border, so he went to live with a man that had the only hotel in Las Cruces. So he lived there for a while my father came to the U.S. And my father was so grateful, so very grateful. And I know this, not because he told me that he was grateful, but I know this from his actions that I noticed after I grew up when World War II started. Soon after December 7th, 1941, when war was declared, my father had a family reunion of some type. I remember this because I was present. And my father alluded to the war and said, "And all of you men must be ready to go and help your country. You were born here. So, and you have been given many privileges that other people don't get. So it is up to you now to go help your country. And those of you that were not born here can help just as well."